Hi, and welcome back to the Blue Morpho Podcast, Through the Vine. I am your host, Maestro Hamilton, and today we have a conversation for you with Barrett Perlman, who is an incredible explorer of the psychedelic spaces, a self-proclaimed psychonaut, and she goes deep into meeting God and different kinds of spirits with ayahuasca, activations and healings that take place, her San Pedro experiences and the difference between San Pedro and ayahuasca. So this one is an episode to listen through all the way to the end when we give advice about integration and what you can experience in preparation for these kinds of plant medicine experiences. At Blue Morpho, we are offering retreats every month. So come to our very special events where you get to experience plant medicine with us. You can check it out on our website at bluemorphotours.com. It's been my life's work over the last 20 years to help others experience healings and transformations through these plant medicines. I've been an advocate for the space the entire time, and I want the opportunity to get to share these medicines with you. So please come join us at a very special event or retreat anytime you would like in the future. And now, the podcast.
So we are in the middle of the Amazon at the Blue Morpho Lodge in the Maloka that you built. And I am sitting there struggling. I am trying to tap into vision. I am trying to figure out how to triangulate between my heart and my third eye and working on some of the skills that we were talking about in calling up different frequencies of different entities. And I figured I would start with something easy for me, like dolphins or orcas. Those are like my spirit animals. And I'm summoning the dolphins. And I just find myself going deeper and deeper and deeper into Middle Earth. Everything's brown. Everything's green. There's tree people. There's all sorts of different underground entities. And I'm like, this is not what I had in mind. How did I get so far from the ocean and the frequency of dolphins and orcas? And you happen to be walking by, and in a rare chance, you look at me and go, "Hey, Barrett, how's it going?" And I was like, "Oh, Hamilton, since you asked, it's actually not going very well. I am really struggling." And I told you what I was struggling with and how I just couldn't seem to access this record, this radio frequency of all the frequencies of every being, every sentient being, everything that we could conjure. And you turned around and you performed a healing on me. You put your hands on top of my head and you made your sound. And it was like this thick, viscous liquid started dripping down my head. And my whole vision went from clear to all of a sudden now it's like lightning bolt static. And everything just statics up while this like heavy viscous stuff drips down and it gets to my third eye and it starts unclogging something. And in that unclogging, I just start sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And you look at me and you're like, "Good." And you walk away. And I finish my sobbing in a couple minutes and I'm like, "Wow, that was cool." And then the static goes away and all of a sudden I am in there with spirit, with source, with God. I am dropped in now to the pilot's chair and everything got so crystal clear. And now I'm calling up every frequency it will. It's like, then I got to call the orcas and the orcas started to teach me how to serve their medicine. And it was like, game on. I'm now driving this pilot ship, the spaceship.
When you say you're driving it, what does that mean for you in that moment where you go from this static place to now you're in the captain chair? What is that for someone who's never done this before?
It feels very much like I'm grounded, I'm rooted, I'm almost sitting somewhere, but all around there's like a field of 360-degree vision. And there's kind of the point right in front of me that's a focal point, and I'm sort of commanding the other entities to step back, step away. I've also done dieta, so now I have 5 different plants, trees living inside of me, so they're always kind of around and at the round table, it feels like, inside my head. But when I'm in the pilot's chair, everyone steps back and it's almost like running down the side is a dial, like on a old school radio. And there's billions of frequencies to choose from. And I can then, through my third eye, think of what I want and pull that frequency up. So like orca, and pull up orca, and then through my heart, triangulate with that vision. So it's like there's the self and the third eye projecting out, and the heart projecting out, and the heart and the third eye meet in the projection. And then there is the entity that I'm calling up. So the orcas, and they oftentimes will be right in front of me or are right below me in sort of like my solar plexus, stomach kind of area.
Do you feel them in your body, like inside you, or are they a vision outside of you? Is it both? What's that like?
Usually they are outside of me, aside from the times that they have invited me to shapeshift into them. That has been one of the coolest experiences. The first animal that invited me to shapeshift into it was a dragon. And that was a really amazing experience. And then the orcas invited me to shapeshift into them. Now I understand I could shapeshift into any animal at will. But in the beginning, it was certainly an invitation. It felt like an invitational experience.
That's incredible. You say like in the command center with God. What happened next? You're there, the frequency clears, everything turns on, and now what transpires?
So once I was excited that I got the orcas, then I decided to work with, I was on dieta at the time. So I was ingesting different plants to commune with my consciousness. They embed in my shungo, the light column, and we become one. And so I started to explore lavender. I thought lavender would be an easy one to start with. And so I call up lavender and I ask lavender to show me your frequency. Help me understand your frequency so I can lock in your frequency and summon you at will. And lavender brought up all these two different shades of purple and like mint. It's like a mint color, a mint green, almost, these two colors. And I'm like, okay, so that's you. And you are so beautiful. And now teach me how to serve your medicine. And lavender then shows me how to serve lavender. And that was a really cool process for my understanding and how to serve lavender with my lavender inside of me. It blows almost like the wind, like a mist, a misty wind that I can blow. And I've actually had the opportunity then to serve that out in the world, and it's really effective.
So I had a temporary internet failure.
It's okay.
Continue with that. You're experiencing God. Continue into what transpires further into the ceremony.
So I'm experiencing God, and I pull up then lavender to ask lavender, show me your frequency. Show me so I can call you up at any time. What is your true frequency? And let's lock that into my knowledge base. And lavender shows me her most beautiful purple and mint color green. It's like these two that kind of intertwine. And so I'm like, okay, that's your frequency. That's beautiful. And now how do I serve your medicine? And lavender in my visual field just starts blowing the lavender like in the wind, as if it took on almost a mist-like form, but then it was like blowing ever so slowly in the wind. And in that, getting blown and meandering and directed into someone or into a specific area. And so I was like, oh, wow, that's beautiful. What a beautiful way to send that medicine. So the lavender then equipped me with the understanding of triangulating that between the heart and the third eye, calling up the lavender frequency, and then through my heart, sending with love and intention to direct that medicine. On my way home from Peru, there was like a baby on a plane that was crying and crying and crying. And I was like, I really hate babies crying. Everyone hates babies crying on the plane. And so I sat there and I was like, let's put this to use. And I just pulled up lavender, sent the medicine. And within about 10 seconds, the baby stopped crying. And I was like, lavender for the win. These skills are applicable.
That's incredible. How did that ceremony end?
Oh, wow. That specific ceremony for me was one of the blessed ones that went on for like 8 to 10 hours, maybe 12 hours, way into the night. I don't think I slept a wink that night. I got to call up all my different dieta trees. I got to spend so much time in what I call like the core of creationism, that core of spirit, where it's less conscious thought and more sheer downloads and understanding. And it's kind of like the universe, any question that you have, you can find an answer to. The answers will be delivered. And so I just spent so much time there studying and asking questions and seeing what else I could call up. And I'm still working on calling in the god Thoth, but he's coming.
I think some of the people listening will think like, it can't be that easy. It can't just be that you drink some tea in the jungle and all of a sudden you pop into an experience like that. So lead us into, what brought you to ayahuasca that week and what led up to that incredible visionary experience.
So that week was my most recent sits with ayahuasca with you. I had previously, through the year, so that was in June, July. In May, I was super sick and I ended up having to take antibiotics and steroids and just nuclear bombed my gut biome. So I was actually pretty depressed when I showed up to the Sacred Valley to sit with you in San Pedro. But we spent that whole week healing that and healing the mindset patterns that had gotten broken, essentially like my core operating system and the coding that was faulty. And we went in and worked on that so that then by the end of that week, everyone started asking, are you going to next week to do the Aya? And I was like, well, shit, now I really want to. And sorted it out and ended up going to the Blue Morpho Lodge and decided to do dieta for the few days we had before the ceremony and all through much of the ceremony as well. So that ceremony in particular that I'm referencing, I think was my 23rd or 24th sit with ayahuasca ever. And yeah, it's, you certainly don't usually start there. That's probably not the intro experience. But after sitting with ayahuasca now over the course of what must be 6 or 7 years, I did my first 2 ayahuascas in Los Angeles. My first one was like, I call it the LA knockoff version. It was like not with a shaman. It was like in a rented out dance studio on a busy street in LA. Things got out of hand there, but I felt confident in being able to handle my own shit. And so I had a good experience. But coming down to see you in Peru has been so absolutely transformative. The knowledge I've learned from you and how to navigate these realms, because I spent so much of my life leading up to that taking mushrooms, and not so much of my life taking mushrooms, but I think I started taking mushrooms around 2016, 2017 and started building body then and doing heroic doses and things and realizing and not understanding then what was fully happening in the medicine, because no one was guiding me. No one was mentoring me, but I knew that there was something there and I knew I just had to keep going back and one day it would all make sense. And on my first ceremony with you in October of 2022, somewhere in that week, there were 4 ceremonies. And I think on the 4th one, I had that cool moment that a lot of people reference where your whole timeline opens up and you understand how everything that happened in the past had to happen exactly the way it happened in order for you to be right here, right now. And I saw where I was going and I saw my path as a medicine woman beginning to walk the path of the shaman. And I saw that all of that time that I spent in the medicine, kind of not knowing, but just knowing I had to go back, is now what we call building body. And going in and experiencing all the different places and understanding how all the different ways that it can work gave me a depth of experience that when I did meet you and we started, doing medicine together and you gave me guidance, that it was much easier for me to execute because I have this depth of experience with the medicine coming in, or a different kind of medicine coming in.
When you were leading into the Sacred Valley trip, the first part of that was with San Pedro, and then you moved into ayahuasca. A lot of people don't know about San Pedro, and so I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. Had you had previous experience with San Pedro, and how was that, and how did it compare to what you experienced with us there? And what was it like going through that healing process? You said you had been depressed, you had antibiotics, your gut biome was off, and that can affect our mental state. So just kind of walk us through your early San Pedro and into that week.
I had done San Pedro before, probably 3 or 4 times before the San Pedro ceremony with you. I had done it on my first trip to Peru. I took a 10-day guided tour that was very spiritually focused and guided by a shaman. And he had a ceremony day for us 2 different times. So I got to do San Pedro in the Sacred Valley, and then also San Pedro at Lake Titicaca. The dosing that they gave us there felt like a handful of people had very strong experiences. The majority of us were like, do you feel anything? Do you feel anything? They were very small, light doses. And San Pedro, as I understand much more now about San Pedro, having sat with you, is a very gentle medicine. And so previously I felt it was more feeling based for me. I felt it open my heart. I felt like an egg ready to crack. So once that topic hit me, that was something I was working on in my healing process, the floodgates on my tears were open, and it was just purge, 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 and transmissions from source. Once I came to you to sit with you, you know that I'm a psychonaut and I prefer stronger doses, and also heed your teachings of when we're healing, the strongest heroic doses are not what you need. You need the appropriate dose for the healing, the smaller doses. Mm-hmm. And so I respected what you dosed me with, especially the first day. I think I had 2 cups with you, but your brew is beautifully much stronger. And I purged so much that first day. A lot of people don't physically like vomit purge on San Pedro. It's very gentle. I think I purged twice that day, and tons of tears and tons of things. And so it was a lot to move through. I had been disconnected from source, from all the synchronicities of the universe, from, I could look at sacred world and I could see it, but I wasn't getting angel numbers anymore. I wasn't getting synchronicities happening in my life. I felt very cut off. And that was making me super depressed on top of what I perceived as my long-term problems that I just didn't really want to deal with anymore. And so when I came to you, we had a nice one-on-one sit down where I explained to you kind of just how bad my depression was and my situation was. And you took me very seriously, as it's very serious work, and talked to me about the recoding and the reprogramming we were going to do of my mindset, my neural work, my operating system. And throughout the 3 sits on San Pedro, that's exactly what we did. The first day really cleared the channels. It felt like a clearing of my gut biome as well, like just allowing it to get rid of some of the toxic waste left over and allow it to have a fertile ground again. I know it still takes a while for that stuff to fully heal, but I felt a lot of that purge out. And there was just a lot of darkness and heaviness that had come into blocking my channels, and those came out. And then through the ceremonies, there were a lot of songs that I know you sing to the room, but there was a lot of eye contact made with me. And there were some songs that, oddly enough, as I talked to others about it, nobody knew, but I knew. You were looking right at me, and we were doing some reprogramming.
For people who don't know what it is in darkness, describe what that's like. Describe what it feels like having them inside you. Describe what a purge is like, and what it feels like afterwards.
Having darkness inside there's like a heaviness to it. There's a constriction to it. There's a lack of flow. So I'm an energy worker, and I'm very energy sensitive and can really feel when things in my body are out of alignment. Sometimes I've been able to feel my heart chakra shifted too far to the left or too far to the right. And through purging and opening, things actually felt it click as it like popped back into the proper place. So when that heaviness then comes out, I've had experiences of purging where it feels like I'm energetically purging like a black tar. It can feel, one time I actually thought I purged a metal object. There was an object that shot out of my mouth, and that was true. It hit my tooth on the way out. Like it, I wasn't going to dig through the bucket, but something was in there. These last couple purges, the cool thing about purging is you generally know what's coming out. It's like you feel the body sucking something in, the medicine sucking and grabbing onto something, and it kind of pulls it to the center and then says, we're getting rid of this. And you're like, okay, let's go. Let's get rid of this. And attaching the intention to it of, here I am getting rid of the darkness. I am opening the channels. I am purging the sickness. And then you put it in the bucket. Or I would happen to be out walking around the gardens at the Lizzie Wassie, so I put it in the plastic bags that they insisted we carry with us.
Hated respect for Lizzie Wassie and their rules. Yeah.
Yeah.
Afterwards, is there a release? Do you just feel like you threw up, or does it feel like something else got transmuted? What happens?
You generally feel pretty great afterwards, depending on how much you're purging, depending on where you are in your process. Yeah. But the purge itself clears the way. And so then the energy channels open up and they start flowing even better. And it's like the rainbow body comes back online and you're like, oh, that's what it feels like to be firing on all cylinders again. I've certainly had other purges where I've purged and it was a whole ceremony long purge where I'm just hugging the bucket, sure that any moment I'm purging. One time you even tried to take my bucket out of my hands. You're like, you don't need that. I was like, yeah, I do. Just let me hold it. Please.
Call it the binky bucket. Yeah. Holding on. I think it's important to talk about purging because a lot of people are scared of it. And they think that it's a bad thing. And they think drinking something that could produce a kind of vomit or defecation is something negative for them because they equate it to being hungover with alcohol or getting the flu or something that makes you throw up. But I just want to, highlight that it's not like that. The purging in plant medicine is this incredible, natural, purposeful release that on the other side of it leaves you feeling typically great, and that it can be a highlight experience. There are some people that say it's part of their favorite part actually to get that stuff out. And I've always said it's miraculous that it exists at all, because we don't realize how our mental states are being affected by the energy that's in us and the energy that we're producing. And when we continue to produce these low vibrational energies, it becomes a mental state, and then it becomes is. And so being able to release that is a miracle found in the plant medicines, and you can walk away from it with a brand new mind, a brand new outlook on life, and it can feel like the fog is lifted and this clarity. And I love that metaphor of all cylinders firing, that all of a sudden you feel your energy body turn back on. I remember that I've been so caught off at times that I even forgot it. I forgot what it felt like to have it on, and everything had become so much mind. And then boom, on the other side of the purge, it's all back on. And that sense memory that's how we're supposed to be.
Amen. I think you make a great point too, that we get so stuck in the mind. So we get stuck up here and we no longer feel the grounding. We no longer feel our power center or the heart. And so when those things come back online, it like whoosh brings you out of the mind and into the heart. And then you're connected to the whole field of everything around you again in a way that feels like, oh shit, this is sacred world. This is God.
Yeah.
This is
yeah. I love
source.
that. I love that. I think recognizing that there's an ability to turn on our frame of mind and state of consciousness that connects us again once to what the real sacred world is. And that the mental experience we have of the world is a kind of illusion compared to the whole world that we're a part of. And it is sacred and beautiful and enchanted. And I think that's the real world that we're supposed to live in. As you went through the week of San Pedro, and we went from the smaller doses, like the 2 cup dose, which is not 2 full, like measured cups. They're small 3 ounce cups. So it's about 6 ounces of San Pedro. And then we moved to some bigger actual like Dixie cup, big cups. What is it like for those who think San Pedro is, quote, the soft medicine of all of these? Like, did you ever have an experience where it started to get a little bit stronger? Tell us about larger doses with San Pedro.
Well, I love a good heroic dose. And so I was like, help me see the heroic side of San Pedro. I would really love to understand this medicine in a way that inspires me to want to incorporate it more into my world. And so then I started taking more heroic, like three of the big cups kind of dosage. And I wanted to see. And San Pedro is really beautiful, and still much more gentle than ayahuasca. The messages are more subtle. They were more subtle for me. But the connection with the earth around us, with nature, was so incredible. And I had a visual alterations. I got to see the in-between on San Pedro, is what I call it, the in-between, which is, the stuff we don't normally see in our waking consciousness. And it had, for anyone who's done Bufo, it had almost a Bufo-like quality to me, which I found to be interesting because ayahuasca does not share overlap with Bufo. Mushrooms do not share overlap with Bufo. This is the first medicine I've encountered that kind of has that. For me, it had similar colors of red, orange, yellow with some greens. Those are the primary colors I get on that. And opening up the interdimensional spaces in a way that's just different from DMT, different from psilocybin, and very gentle, almost like it's got this constant flowing outward lotus blossoming, which would be a good comparison for it. And that was really cool. It was really beautiful. And it gave me this strong sense of connection with the animals as well. I walked around and there was an alpaca, and they're not stoked on humans. Like, we are so excited about them, and they're like, oh God, again, here we go again. And so I walked up to this one alpaca who wanted nothing to do with me. And I just stood there. And after a minute, the alpaca walks right up to me and puts her nose to my nose. And we just go nose to nose, staring into each other's eyes now. And it was like the alpaca knew I was deeply dropped in and connected to all the things. And it even dropped its nose down and started nuzzling my heart a little bit. And then I guess, gave me some alpaca medicine as well. And so it just really opens up your consciousness. It really opens up the heart, and it really opens up a deep sense of grounding that I think is really specific to San Pedro.
That's beautiful. Ayahuasca is often related to these detailed geometric mushrooms, this kind of waviness associated with it and stuff. Was there a quality to San Pedro that you would describe other than just the lotus flower?
Yeah, it's not either one of those that you just described. I mean, it has a waviness to it, but in its depths, it's kind of like I close my eyes and try to visualize what it would start in the middle of the visual field and radiate outward or just upward. And so those colors would be evolving and changing. I didn't personally really have any experiences of being able to like go in and call up entities or go in and call up the frequencies of the beings that I wanted to work with. But I did have really dropped in experiences there was another facilitator there who guided me through a healing with my mom. And that was just, the field was so open for that. And I could kind of see what we were talking about and really feel the energetic lines in what we were doing. And so, yeah, it was, and again, the red, orange, yellow kind of greens are like those earthier, almost lower chakra colors that I think San Pedro really embodies for me in my visual field.
I find in San Pedro that nature becomes obvious. Not I'm like walking through nature, but the field of nature is just obvious. You're part of nature and your nature is there, and there's a harmony with nature that naturally forms. And if you start in disharmonies, there's an awakening with it. And I often will feel through the early waves of it, a kind of whelm. It's never overwhelming, but it's sort of like have to breathe kind of deeply and accept the fact that there's the shift that's taking place. And I love the word in between that you described, that the in between becomes also apparent. And what the locals call spirit of nature becomes really apparent too. Like, oh, it's not, I'm talking about a spirit of the mountain. The spirit of the mountain is exactly where the mountain is, and you can really feel it. And it feels like the mountain is awake and alive and you can connect with it. And it seems like that union with nature is a big part of the medicine and also the way that it heals. And it's for me always been so grounding that it's not so dissociative in the nature of some of these other medicines where it feels like physical reality just disappears, but rather it seems like physical reality is even more rooted and more grounded. And you can kind of see through that three-dimensional state, and you can start to see the multidimensional state of the space. And I agree that the animals seem to become much more accepting of us. Instead of feeling like become much more accepting, and that the spirit speaks through awareness and states of awareness instead of it being so visual in context that it's like in ayahuasca where it feels like you can just be putting it right in your face and there's no way to see something else. It seems to be very internal in that way. And I've appreciated it for that nature of its depth to connect and unique. I like how you describe how unique it is. It's not like one of the other medicines. I don't think it deserves to be compared. I think it's very hard to compare them to each other. They're such unique entities in their own right. By the end of the week, what did you feel like?
Oh, I felt great. I felt peaceful. I hadn't felt peaceful in quite a few months. I felt very peaceful. I felt my heart back online. All the synchronicities and transmissions were coming through. I felt like I could tap into my own intuition again. I felt very reconnect. The hummingbird is another one of my spirit animals, and the hummingbirds would come and fly and stop right in front of me and deliver me little messages, and all of nature seemed to be back on point with I was back in the flow of it. I was back in part of it. I was grounded here on earth and welcome home.
Incredible. That's an incredible transformation from showing up with those emotional charges and depths, discomfort, the depth of the darkness and the depression, and to leave 5 days later with that released and gone. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
For those who don't know you who are listening, tell everybody how you came to psychedelics and plant medicines. Like, who were you before all of this, and what brought you into this new world for you?
Before all of this, I was a professional wakeboarder. I was a Hollywood stunt woman and a TV producer. And I had this sort of deep depression that I carried with me my whole life. And it really showed up in forms of abusing alcohol and getting in lots of trouble with that. Alcohol tried to destroy my life in so many ways. And I was showing up with incredibly anxious attachment patterns in relationships. And as an adrenaline seeker, it just, takes a certain toll on you when you're constantly seeking peak experiences. And I got into psychedelics after a breakup with a boyfriend who had really led me to believe a lot of things about myself that I don't think inherently were true. And they may have been his truth at the time, but I was insanely depressed and I wanted to die. And I thought, well, I have these mushrooms and I'll take them and see what happens. I'll try to see some auras. And if nothing changes, like, death is always available to me. And it was that first real mushroom journey with intention and looking to tap into something different that a higher consciousness came to me and channeled me through and walked me through a process of how to love myself for the very first time in probably my entire life. And it shattered my heart wide open. And for months, I was just this wide open, like, oh my God, I didn't know life was this good. I didn't know my heart could be this big. What's going on with these mushrooms? And I had no guide in my life. I had no mentor. I began to simply self-study. And I would set up and take mushrooms. I called them my mushroom journeys. And by myself in my bedroom, I would, go under the covers and close my eyes and just sit with mushrooms. And I made the effort to sit with them at least once a month. And all sorts of things came up, and I began to unknowingly to me, do the work. And I had a big background, and I landed myself in therapy my first time at 8 years old for depression. And so I had a long background at that point of being able to talk to myself through anything, through all the therapeutic ways. And I was very into self-help and self-development, which is a very wonderful tool to have in the medicine when you're the only one talking to you. And so I went in, and then things began to bubble up, and the ways that people had hurt me, I began to forgive. The ways that I had allowed myself to be hurt, I began to forgive myself. The ways that I had hurt others, I began to forgive myself. And everything began to get reframed in an understanding of, instead of holding these grudges, these were life lessons, and what beautiful things I had learned along the way. And so I began then to eventually seek out ayahuasca. I really don't remember how I heard about it. I think I was like, okay, there's mushrooms. What else is there? And I heard about ayahuasca and was like, take me there. Maybe I saw it actually on a documentary series. There was something about some fringe topics, and I love fringe everything. And so I, did the LA knockoff version experience. But then as I started to I had a bad snowboard accident that changed the trajectory of my life. And after being in and out of the hospital for a month, not being able to breathe because I had bruised my lungs and got injury-induced asthma, I came out the other side and changed careers and got into massage therapy and the healing arts. And that really started me on the path of leaning into my own abilities as a healer. And I started to go to Bali, to Guatemala, to be with myself and to learn from different spiritual teachers and to have different experiences that would cleanse my soul and bring purification and healing to my body and in my mind. And I had a psychic that I was working with, and I asked her, I know I need to make a new big trip somewhere. Do I go to Nepal, or do I go to... Before I could even actually ask the question, she was like, you need to go to Peru. You need to go to the Amazon. And I was like, I was just going to ask you if I should go to Nepal or Peru. And so she laid that out for me. And I spent the next year planning my first pilgrimage to Peru. And as that time came closer, so as that October of 2022 came near, I think that summer, so around July, August, I was listening to the Aubrey Marcus podcast, and it just happened to be on shuffle, which it never is. And it shuffled from whatever episode I was on down to one of your episodes with Aubrey. And we're talking about all these cosmic shamanic battles and how to work and navigate in the medicine. And I went, holy shit balls. Who is this guy? I need to know him. I need to study with him. He's talking about the medicine in a way that I feel like I've been preparing for my whole life. And I'm at the point now where I don't know what to do in here, but there's more I can do. And I found you on Instagram. I added you, and I was like, okay, I'll invite him on my podcast tomorrow. I'll figure out how to send that message. And I woke up the next morning and you were in my DMs saying, hey, I'd love to interview on your podcast. And so thank you for being so dialed in. And we connected, and you invited me to your first retreat back out of COVID. And it just happened to be while I was in Peru and the week I had free in my whole trip. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. This is clearly a calling. This is clearly aligned on my journey, and I will follow. And that was how I made my way to you.
Amazing. That's a great story. There's so many synchronicities in there, and the path out of incredible darkness. I really like what you described about, getting in the medicine and quote, doing the work. And I think it's important to highlight that these are miraculous medicines, but the miracle isn't just because you take the medicine. Mm-hmm. And when the medicine gives you an opportunity to make changes in your life, then you actually go to make the changes in your life. So, often people will think that, oh, you just drink ayahuasca or you just eat some mushrooms and that's going to make everything better. But really, there's a deep path that you follow through forgiveness, through greater understandings and continuous awakenings, where you wake up to, more harmonious and more balanced ways of approaching life that, is important to understand. I see in the psychedelic renaissance, a lot of people that are now treating the plant medicines like they do antidepressants, that's like, here, just take this. But I think it's important to understand that it's not just take this or take this once a week or microdose and that's going to solve everything, but rather that it gives you opportunity and a new way of thinking and a new frame of mind to be able to then actually go in and make those changes. For
Absolutely.
you as a guide, I know you've been guiding people and working in the space. What do others who are thinking that they want to guide in the space, that they want to do this? A lot of people are making it sound like it's this Cinderella story, but I don't really think it is. It wasn't for me. And so for those who are also in the space, I like them to share, some of the things that somebody needs to think about when they get involved.
Yeah, it is not a Cinderella story. I would not wish the amount of heartache I have experienced in my life on anyone. I think as a healer, as a guide, our path comes with a tumultuous beginning and gives us a lot of curriculum to have to work through to heal, so that when we become guides, when we become coaches, we can help others through those situations. And like you were saying, that's something I work with my clients on, of like, it's not just taking the medicine and here you're going to be happy and you're going to see God. It's, what are your intentions behind it? And it is a very intelligent medicine. It will do things sometimes that may not be what you wanted. Like the amount of times I've taken a microdose and ended up crying all day was what my body needed to open my energy channels, even though that wasn't the intention that I set. It was the medicine going, this is what you need. And developing that deep respect for its intelligence and inviting it to be your ally. And in that way, getting to work together so that when you go in and do the work, because you're right, it's not just a take the medicine and all will be solved. It's a take the medicine and now I have to sit in the medicine and ask myself the questions and explore the spaces and go into the things and topics that feel uncomfortable. And there probably will be purging in some way. And sometimes that's laughter. Sometimes that's movement. Sometimes that's burping. Sometimes that's tears. Sometimes that's vomiting. It once you understand what purging is and the effect that it has on the system of opening you up and letting go of the things that are stuck and stored within, purging is my favorite. I love the purge, but I love doing the work. And I think what I see in a lot of people who have done a lot of the work is the more that you do the work and you experience the actual healing that comes from confronting yourself, confronting your pain, and being held in a safe space with a guide or someone to let it go, and experiencing what the lightness that comes after that, we kind of become sick fucks for doing the work. Like it is, I love being the phoenix and undergoing the transformation. And then for those who decide to walk the path of also becoming a guide or a coach, it's a huge responsibility to sit in your own integrity, to develop what that integrity looks like, to be able to hold people safely and lovingly and in a way that can help them unfold and navigate their own trauma and their own healing. It's a big body of work, and one that I think truly takes a calling. And I have received that calling, especially after my first sit, that first week on ayahuasca with you, when that timeline opened up for me. I saw it and I was like, oh, this is my life's purpose. My life's purpose is to facilitate this medicine. The mushrooms even came to me on the medicine and said, it is your life's purpose to serve us, and we will catch you every step of the way as long as that's what you do. And at times I have strayed from that and gone, oh, I'm going to lean more into the coaching, or I'm going to lean more into passive income. And I just keep getting brought back. That was one of my big discoveries on our last retreat as well, with the San Pedro and the ayahuasca sittings, was, I have tried to stray away from this calling as a healer, as a guide. And there is no straying. That is my life's purpose. And that is where I am so excited to be when I'm in it. That is my biggest playground. And as I seriously do the work, it is also a lot of play for me, and in that, a great time.
With all the experience you have now, the hundreds of journeys that you've done, if you go back to the you before you ever started, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I was thinking on this question. I think I would go back and tell myself, there will be love. You will be loved. you will love yourself and you will love your life. Trust the process. And if I could get me to psychedelics any sooner, I would have done it. But at the same time, I don't think any single part of my path could have been changed. It happened exactly how it was meant to. All of the heartaches, all of the pain, all of the trouble with the law, all of it happened exactly how it had to get me right here, right now. But
That's
I
a
would let
beautiful
little
sentiment.
Barrett know she's going to be
Yeah,
loved.
it's a beautiful sentiment. We will all tell little Barrett that little Barrett will be loved. She has to find the love inside herself and inside the medicine, inside this incredible universe.
Mm-hmm.
What's your message? And I'd love to ask you this in 5 years and in 10 years and in 15 years. But for right now, what is sort of your message for the people, for humanity, for the world?
I think everything comes back to love. Everything really boils back down to love, to self-love. And then in that self-love, our ability to unconditionally love and share that love with others. Through my own journey of so much pain and so much depression and lack of love for myself until recent years, I am now at a place where my heart is so unconditionally loving. It's overwhelming at times that how much I love everyone, not just my friends and family and partners, but how much I love perfect strangers and animals. And we all have that capacity, but most of us have encountered some sort of trauma or pain along the way that has made us feel not safe to love that way. And so I invite everyone, this is the biggest work I do with my clients, is how to open the heart and how to lean into more love. And for everyone, I think that is the path. Ask yourself, how can you live each day with more love? And what could you do for yourself in a healing fashion or in a self-development fashion to let go of the pain so that you can heal and you can love harder?
Oh, it's a beautiful message. I second that message. Yay to Barrett for bringing the message of love. That message the world needs a lot more of, and we got all of it. So if we start sharing it more, guys, we will experience it more. As part of Through the Vine podcast, we have an AMA for our listeners to join in and send questions. And so I got a bunch of questions here that I want to ask you and a couple that I would like to answer as well. So first, I want to get here because I know you talk about this a lot, and I know you can speak really well on this. The person writes, I don't know much about individual spirits. What do you mean by individual spirits? What does it mean when people say demonic or astral, these words? For you, what is that? What's individual spirit or demonic or astral?
To me, an individual spirit is a sentient being, which is sort of a Buddhist term, but a sentient being is anything with intelligence. An individual spirit, everything has a spirit. So this crystal I have in my hand has a spirit. My cell phone has a spirit. I have a spirit. You have a spirit. The wind has a spirit. A dolphin has a spirit. An orchid has a spirit. Water has a spirit. Everything has a spirit. And so calling those up and working with those is really isolating them from the rest of the fabric of the universe and saying, I'm going to speak specifically with this one now. And that's the specific frequency on the radio dial that I'm talking about. In terms of demonic, I think that those are, it's a overclassification of entity that may be of darkness or of shadow. But everything in this world is kind of the light and of the shadows, and we need both. And one isn't better than the other because, when you cast light upon us, we immediately have a shadow. They coexist, and there's lessons from both of them. And so it's something, we may interpret something as demonic, but there is a message in there from the darkness. And what was the other one? The angelic.
Astral. What's astral?
Astral is out of the body. It is in the multiple dimensions in the cosmos. It is, it's a very cosmic, but I think also multidimensional astral. When your spirit sort of leaves your body and then can walk in different dimensions, and they're wildly different sentient beings out there. and rules, and not rules per se, but ways that societies exist, ways that worlds exist, ways that planets and timelines and things exist. They have essentially like different rules and ways of being. So there may be different ways that they communicate. There may be different colors to the sky. There may be different laws of gravity or no gravity. It's very, very interesting what's out there in the astral and the cosmic realms. What do you think of? How would you differentiate demonic beings and then the astral?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, demonic is a class. It's a kind of classification. And when you have these experiences, you see there's lots of classifications, like the happy angelic. And then there's the angelic that also gets described as demonic. And there's like beastly quality. And it comes from our mythologies. And you can type it into Google and you can see all this imagery that comes up that people have imagined about it all. And I think that the demonic is a overused mechanism for controlling fear currently in human populations. They get you to imagine really scary things and give your power over to it, instead of realizing that within you, you have all the power, all the light, all the love, God, that you need to walk through the valley of shadow and not fear. And so I think you'll see most of demonic in artwork. And it was a representation to sort of say, be cautious about that nature and that kind of a thing. And I think it's gotten overplayed and people have put a lot of fear and importance into it. And that has grown it over time, even though now it's really in the shadows. It's not so brought up all the time anymore. It's sort of like culturally in the day-to-day, although the culture is, moved by it. And astral for me is, like you say, it's into the cosmos. Astral is the plane of existence beyond that of the self-reflective, human bubble that we're in during our lifetime. And it just means that there's so much more out there. I mean, if there's the tiniest amount of earth, there's endless amounts of astral, and that we can go into those states of consciousness and we find out that it's normal, not strange. Often we dream it, and it's in lots of people's dreams. So it doesn't have to be some big, weird, strange, out there concept. It can just be, there's a lot more going on here. Let's open our eyes to it. We've had a really narrow focus, and it's freedom. The astral represents an expansive freedom. It's one of my favorite places to be. It's where I like to go in ceremony, and I like to lead. When you're talking about the command center, to command from the astral is a beautiful place.
Yes, it is.
All right. The next question: what is the importance of integration after an ayahuasca ceremony?
Ooh, it is all important. Integration is a process that, you can real time integrate at the same, but there's also an integration that happens for the rest of your life from ceremonies. I think some of the biggest lessons are unpacking what your big discoveries were and how to take those discoveries and implement change in your life. Because if you go to an ayahuasca ceremony, you have an experience, and then you go back to your life and you haven't changed at all, you haven't quite done the work, or you didn't quite get the lessons. There are always lessons in there. And the integration is really about unpacking the experience, finding the lessons, and finding the ways to use them as curriculum in your own life to evolve. And I think sometimes that takes, there's sometimes you need multiple data points as well. I'm finding in some of my heroic doses that I've done over the last several months, where the first one, I had a really challenging experience, didn't make sense, scared me. 2 months later, had another one. It didn't make a lot of sense. It scared me. 2 months later, had another one. It scared me again. And now I'm like, okay, I have these 3 data sets, and now I know what we're doing, and now I can take this and I can run with this. And this has actually become a training tool for me to evolve into the next evolution of myself from these really challenging experiences. And I'll be honest, I pretty rarely get super challenging experiences, but I've had a few of them in the last year, and they have provided the biggest lessons to integrate. And I'm speaking about them almost every day to my friend circle, to my colleagues, to you. And still unpacking what else was in there.
Yeah, I love that. Integration for me is one of the most important parts of the process, and it's the longest part. Mm-hmm. So when you come to integration, you need to know that you might have done a week of ceremonies, and now you're going to do 6 months to a year of integration. And we're launching 6-month and year-long integration programs to really guide somebody through that. And it's the gift that you give to yourself. It's an investment that you make in your transformation. And I think we need to expand in the plant medicine space the understanding that the intervention is with the plant medicines and the integration is where our life really changes. And that's where the lasting change comes from. We're asked here, how can sanctuary help with integration?
So I have really been leaning into sanctuary, and especially after my most recent challenging dose. Okay, so I want to apply this answer to the integration part, but boy, applying it to ceremony is epic as well.
Let's talk about that too.
Yeah. So after my most recent super challenging ceremony, we have a dear friend in our Blue Morpho community and facilitator training, John JB. And JB was like, Barrett, you don't have to sit in the pain and suffering of the experience. You got to give it to sanctuary and ask God to take it. And I was like, oh yeah. I don't know why I always forget that when I'm deep in it and everything sucks. And so I really implemented that on my next ceremony. I went in and was doing some self-work and some self-healing. When things started to I started to feel my fear rise, and I said, no, I give this to God. And I invoke sanctuary. Let's self-ground this. Let's heal this. Let's harmonize this. Let's orient this. Let's balance this. And it just almost created like a gyroscope of balancing and it just took things and went poof, like it moved everything the way that it needed to and created this, like, I'm doing your power move for people who can see. Hamilton has this like elbows down, fists up, fists go out, boom. That's how the walls lock and the grid of sanctuary becomes the matrix that is the protective temple. And it's really powerful technique for evoking. And so then carrying that out into the world, it's evocable everywhere and through the integration process. So when challenging things come up and you're sitting with the lesson of remembering perhaps the trauma or the pain that you worked through in ceremony, and maybe it begins to bring up some new pain and some new emotions to purge. And it's like, sanctuary, help me balance this, help me orient this, help me ground this. I love the grounding of sanctuary. I keep doing your power move. But I really enjoy using that a lot out in the world, in especially chaotic situations, or when I feel myself getting a little excited. I'll be like, self-ground this, sanctuary, let's ground this. I was driving through fog. We've had this death fog here in Huntington Beach lately, and I was driving through it the other night, and I was like, oh shit, this is actually dangerous. All right, sanctuary, let's ground this, let's orient this, let's clear the way and just make it a safe drive for now. And so that all of sanctuary is very evocable in the ceremony, in the integration, and then just in everyday life.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Sanctuary for me helps integration by providing a constant and consistent container and framework for ourselves. And so I think during integration, we have these big waves of really understanding and inner darknesses that we process through and needing help and support, and sanctuary is there to provide that with consistency. And it gives us a direction and a method. It shows us in our union with spirit and with the universe, God, we have the support we always need. And the idea of, as you shared, balancing, grounding, harmonizing, reorienting, it gives us a constant mechanism and feedback system to process what starts to come up. And I think a lot of people find integration overwhelming, or they feel like they lose their path or lose their way. And so we can always go back to sanctuary to support integration. And I found it to be the most powerful integration tool we have.
Yes.
All right. What advice would you give to someone who is considering participating in an ayahuasca ceremony?
If you are considering participating in an ayahuasca ceremony, you are receiving the call. You are receiving the call from Aya, and it would behoove you to follow. the medicine reaches out and she calls. And when it's on your radar and you're thinking about it, it is time. Follow the call. It is the next step in your journey. What do you think?
I'm going to go with you on that one. I think if you're thinking about it and you're considering that is the calling, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Find a reputable place. If you want to come to Blue Morpho, come to Blue Morpho. Take it seriously and invest in yourself. Do the preparation, do the experience, and integrate. Think that you're going to go through a 6 to 12 month transformational process, and it's going to be the best gift you give to yourself if you set it up well. And so just love it and hear it and turn fear off about it. There's nothing to be scared about. Embrace the unknown that the experience can give and join the millions of people who've had this experience. And most important after that is be in a community that you can share with people what your experience was like, that can talk about other or, experience that aren't just mainstream, because you'll have experience. And so I think that's one of the most beautiful things about this community, is that you can share these ideas and the things that we talk about, and people will understand you.
Yeah, I want to add to that a little bit too. I think it's super important for people to follow the shaman, follow the guide, know who you're specifically going to be working with, as opposed to just the facility or it's available at this location. Like, the guide is the most important part of the ceremony, as well as what medicine they serve, but you're probably not going to be able to get a good handle on that before you go. But the guide is who you want to know, like, what kind of messages are they going to be putting out into ceremony? How are they going to lead their ceremonies? Do you resonate with that person on a soul level? And do you trust them? That's the best advice.
I love that advice, Barrett. On that note, we will wrap this up. What an incredible conversation we've just had. How do people follow you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is on Instagram at Barrett Perlman, or through my website at www.barrettperlman.com. And I'm happy to talk with anyone who would like to do some deeper work. And we can do that through ceremony, through spiritual guidance. Get at me and let's talk about where you're at and where you'd like to go.
Awesome, Barrett. Thank you so much. I loved this episode of Through the Vine, and I look forward to many more. And hopefully I'll get to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.